Halloween birthday story for Juliette. Poncho, Lefty, and Bug Juice learn about Halloween and ghosts by Opa. In October, about the time of Juliette's 5th birthday, Poncho, Lefty, and Bug Juice were watching television when they saw a story about Halloween. Children were dressed up in costumes and asking for treats of candy and fruits and popcorn. They looked like witches and ghosts and pirates and cowboys and princesses. Of course, Poncho's ears stood straight up when he heard and saw treats. Lefty was puzzled why children would put on costumes and go to people's houses asking for goodies. Bug Juice, who always seemed to get right to the heart of the matter, suggested they ask Mrs. Mockingbird what this Halloween thing was all about. As we know, Mrs. Mockingbird, who has several children, was always available to answer any questions Poncho, Lefty, and Bug Juice might have. Mrs. Mockingbird is very smart and knows lots of things. She is also kind and more than happy to help Poncho, Lefty, and Bug Juice. So the three friends found Mrs. Mockingbird perched high on a branch in the oak tree in front of Oma's and Opa's house. Mrs. Mockingbird just finished feeding her children some nice bugs and worms she found in Oma's flower bed. Mrs. Mockingbird, quacked Bug Juice, "We have something to ask you." Mrs. Mockingbird, always happy to help, flew down to a lower branch so she could be closer to her friends and asked how she could help. "Mrs. Mockingbird," began Lefty, "we saw some children on television dressed up in costumes going to people's houses asking for treats." "Yeah, we want treats," interrupted Poncho, who seemed to always think about food. "We were wondering what that is all about," continued Lefty, ignoring Poncho's food interruption. "Well," began Mrs. Mockingbird, "many years ago, ancient peoples called Druids celebrated the end of harvest time, which is the time they gathered food for winter. They also believed it was the time that the spirits of their ancestors roamed the earth looking for a peaceful place. Sometimes the spirits or ghosts were mean and they would scare people and cause harm in the villages. The Druids built large fires to keep the spirit ghosts away. They sometimes wore costumes so the ghosts would not recognize them. Many years later, the Catholic Church calls this time of year All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day to honor saints who did not have a day of their own to celebrate. All Hallows' Day was changed to Halloween. The tradition of trick-or-treating began in England when the villagers would give cakes to the poor people in return for prayers for their dead relatives. Other countries have celebrations like Halloween too. This time of year, continued Mrs. Mockingbird, in Holland they celebrate Sint Maarten Day on November the 11th. Mrs. Mockingbird went on to tell her friends Poncho and Lefty and Bug Juice the story of Saint Martin. Mused Lefty. "Halloween is the time ghosts and goblins roam the earth. That's what they say," said Mrs. Mockingbird. "I want to know about the treats and how we can get some," said Poncho. "I don't believe in ghosts," said Lefty. "I do," replied Bug Juice, with a frightened little quack in his voice. "We better not go out on Halloween or we might see ghosts, and that would really scare the feathers out of me," continued Bug Juice. "I want to trick or treat," said Poncho. I wouldn't trick anyone even if they didn't give me a treat, but I sure could use a treat about right now." After Mrs. Mockingbird back to her nest and children, the three friends discussed Halloween and the information Mrs. Mockingbird gave them. Poncho, of course, was excited because he thought it was an opportunity to gather up treats to eat. Lefty was puzzled about the existence of ghosts. Bug Juice decided he did not want anything to do with ghosts. Poncho spoke up and told the group that it looked like children went trick-or-treating at night when it was dark. He suggested as soon as it was dark, they could go to Oma and Opa's neighbors and ask for treats. Bugjuice added they were supposed to wear costumes. Lefty offered they could dress up as two dogs and a duck. In other words, go as themselves. The neighbors wouldn't know they actually were two dogs and a duck. The neighbors would think it was children dressed up as two dogs and a duck, reasoned Lefty. That is a stupid idea, said Bugjuice. The neighbors will know we live with Oma and Opa, and we are two dogs and a duck. Pancho and Lefty ignored Bugjuice. Pancho was thinking about treats, and Lefty was still thinking about ghosts. They gave up on the idea of dressing up. They would just be themselves. Okay, said Lefty finally, here's the plan. As soon as it's dark, and before we go trick-or-treating, we will go to the cemetery to look for ghosts. I want to look for treats first, said Pancho. Why go to the cemetery, said Bugjuice, and by the way, I don't want to look for ghosts. The cemetery is where they bury people after they no longer are living, said Lefty, and what better place to find ghosts? After we look for ghosts in the cemetery, we can trick or treat so Pancho can get some treats, he continued. Soon the sun went down and it started to get dark. The three friends set out for the cemetery, which was quite far from Oma and Opa's house. As the sun went down, the moon began to show through the trees. It was night of the full moon. The moon was bright and a little scary since it was Halloween. Bugjuice was reluctant to go. In fact, he absolutely did not want to go. Lefty coaxed him and called him a wimpy duck. Finally, still not wanting to go to the cemetery, Bugjuice agreed to waddle along. The moon rose higher in the sky, casting shadows through the trees. It was scary. There was a slight wind, and the only sounds were the chirping of the crickets in the grass. All in all, it was a fitting Halloween night. Spooky and a great night for ghosts. Soon they arrived at the cemetery. Tree branches were waving in the wind and casting dancing shadows across the gravestones. Two dogs and a duck alone in the cemetery. Only the silent gravestones kept them company. Bugjuice was very afraid and wished he'd stayed home at Oma's and Opa's. He was mad at Lefty for talking him into going to the cemetery. Pancho was sniffing around here and there among the gravestones, thinking about food and wondering why they were spending their time looking for ghosts when they could be gathering up treats at the neighbors. Lefty's ears were straight up, and his nose was in the air sniffing. He was listening and sniffing for ghosts. Suddenly, there was a low moaning sound. What was that? Said Bugjuice. Let's get out of here. I'm scared. Pancho, although not as frightened as Bugjuice, thought leaving would be a good idea too. Lefty, a little nervous over the moaning sound, was still determined to find ghosts. There it was again, said Lefty. I think it came from over by that tall gravestone by the oak tree. The wind picked up and the moon was higher in the sky, making the shadows from the trees bob and dance across the gravestones. Come on, said Lefty, over here. I'm not going anywhere, said Bugjuice. If there are ghosts, we need to leave them alone. They do not want us here. Lefty didn't pay any attention to Bugjuice and started to walk toward the moaning sound. As they got closer to the big oak tree and the tall gravestones, they heard the crunching of leaves and branches like someone walking toward them. The three looked into the eerie darkness, but could see no one. Crunch, snap, snap, the sounds continued. Lefty, the only brave one of the bunch, peered around the tall gravestone and saw 3 boys, just as one of them made the ooh sound. They were giggling and laughing over having scared Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice. "Hey," quacked Bug Juice to the 3 boys, "you really frightened us, and that wasn't nice." The boys really started laughing then. One of the boys, giggling, spoke up and told the 3 friends they were sorry they scared them, but it was sure funny, especially how frightened Bug Juice was. Lefty was disappointed he didn't get to see a real ghost, but he wasn't too mad at the boys because of their prank. After all, Lefty wondered what he would do if he really saw a ghost. Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice and the 3 boys decided it was time to go home, and the 6 started walking out of the spooky cemetery. All 6 decided maybe a cemetery wasn't the place to be on Halloween night. Just as the 6 were leaving the cemetery, a cloud drifted across the bright moon, making the cemetery dark. The 6 stopped because they couldn't see the path that would take them out of the cemetery and home. Suddenly, there was a low moaning noise. And a thump, thump sound like heavy footsteps. "Who's there?" shouted one of the boys in a frightened voice. There was no answer. Just then they heard the thump, thump, moan again. The cloud that was hiding the moon drifted by so the 6 could see a little better. They saw the shadow of something big moving across the gravestone. Then another "hoo." One of the boys said, "I'm getting out of here. This place is haunted." With that, the 3 boys, along with Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice, took off running as fast as they could. Finally, Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice reached Oma and Opa's house. They were all out of breath. Bug Juice said he had never been so scared. Pancho was scared too, but he was more upset because they had never got to go to the neighbors and ask for treats. Lefty, feeling much braver since he was safely home with Oma and Opa, he said he wasn't scared and would like to go back to the cemetery someday. He offered that he would show those ghosts. Bug Juice told Lefty he would have to go by himself. Of course, they all knew Lefty would never went anywhere without his friends. Just what was that moaning sound and those heavy footsteps when we left the cemetery, said Bug Juice. The boys were with us when we left. They were really scared too. And what was that big shadow? It looked like a monster ghost to me. It was definitely a ghost, said Pancho, and I'm hungry. Whatever made that sound was lucky that I didn't see it, said Lefty bravely. I wonder just what thing made that eerie, ghost-like shadow. I wonder what made those moaning sounds, the 3 questioned. It was probably an owl, said Pancho. They go hoo-hoo. Or it could be a raccoon or some other animal, he continued. I never liked raccoons. I think it was a ghost, looking for a peaceful place to rest, said Bug Juice. No doubt it was a ghost. I think we should go back next Halloween, said Lefty. No, said Pancho and Bug Juice both at the same time. We are never going back to that cemetery ever. So ended Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice's Halloween, a Halloween they would soon not forget. I wonder what sound Pancho, Lefty, and Bug Juice heard when they were leaving the cemetery. Was it a ghost? Or was it something else out there? What do you think it was? Happy Halloween. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Juliette. That was scary, Opa. That was too scary.